Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Susan Sykes and David Hiatt. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here today, both of you. You're going to share your latest and new book. Yes, you can take a day off. Escape the 9 traps of growing your small business, which we talked just briefly before getting started here, that businesses often forget to do that very important thing of R&R. So important to rest your soul, your spirit, and take that time off so you can continue to grow as a business. But before we go to sharing your wonderful book, share a little bit about your background. Susan, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, thanks for having me on. First of all, I'm really excited to be here. I am what I would describe as a serial entrepreneur. So I started out in the tech world and spent a lot of time in tech sales and developing tech businesses, and love doing that and love helping small businesses. So I've been doing that for a number of years, and mostly in the Southeast United States and around the world now with Sandler.
Wow. And David?
Well, much like Susan, except I started out when I was about 9 years old, being an entrepreneur, and worked well for me, found ways that I could always make a little pocket change for a young kid. That continued into my adult life, and I basically found a home with Sandler about 27 years ago, and have absolutely loved it ever since.
And so now, for people who don't know, what is Sandler's training? What is it? And tell them a little bit about the company.
Well, Sandler is basically a sales management, leadership, growth and development firm.
Awesome.
That people reach out to us when they're typically frustrated with the revenue they're generating or not generating.
Which is off. Sometimes they go on, Susan.
I was just going to say, or sometimes they just need a day off, right?
Oh, exactly. And you need the extra help. And tell me if you've gotten this. I think small businesses, especially when you're getting started, have that trouble of just asking for help and knowing, like one gal said she owned and runs a watch company. And she said, do you know, I quality check every single watch that goes out. I want to make sure my hands touch it, that it goes out right. And she said, I finally had to let go of the quality control and trust that my workers could do it and give myself some much needed time away sometimes. And I think that's hard for them to let go sometimes.
I think it's super hard to do.
Yeah, that reminds me of the trap. I think you're going there, Susan. Nobody does it better than I do trap, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're going to talk about the 9 traps, which I'm guessing is one of them. Is that one of the 9 traps we're talking about here?
It is.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get started? Share. We don't want to give it all away, but let's share 1 or 2 of them. One of them being that need to do everything. How do they begin to let go and realize that there are other people who can do a good job?
So that's a really good question. And I'll kind of start with that. And if I could, I'll talk about just a little bit at a high level that we kind of categorize these 9 traps into 3 different areas. Mm-hmm. First being what we would call passion killers. The second area being what we would call communication killers. And then lastly, revenue killers. And that very first trap that we're talking about, that need to let go, and I have to do it all myself, really falls into that passion killer. So when you think about that, when you're the only one that can do what you can do, then you're the only one that can do what you can do. And so that trap really resonates from what I would call 2 areas. And I'll ask Dave to jump in here in just a moment. But the 2 areas are, nobody can, I haven't trained people to take over. And in the case that you were just discussing, to do the quality. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, I actually haven't taught them how I think and how they can make decisions when I'm not there.
Mm. Yeah. And
I think part of that issue is people's egos get in the way. They get into a situation where they do something excellent. They have a certain skill set or a certain knowledge base, and their ego really won't let them let go of it. And many times they'll hang on to that too soon, to the demise of the business. In your example for the young lady with the watch, she continued with that and thousands of watches. She just limited her company's growth to what can come through her hands. So.
Yeah, it's so interesting because what it is I understand when it's your company, probably no one's going to care about it as much as you because you did grow it from its infancy to where it is. But you certainly can't get any further unless you start to train, give people the tools they need so they can do what you shouldn't be doing, which is just going out there, getting the sales and growing your business.
So I think that's true. I think when you really put out there, when an owner takes a moment to take a step back, and this kind of falls into also that passion killing category that we talk about, of vision setting and making sure that you share the vision with people that are around you. So it's not just your company vision, it's also your personal mission and vision, because as the business owner, your personal vision is what it fuels your business. And so if the owner has taken the time to step back and really think through that and communicate that out into the marketplace, then you do tend to attract people that are like you in your business. So in that way, you can develop people that they may not care about it quite as much as you, but they'll get pretty darn close.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, when I work with a company, it's important for me, my quality, my person, that I want to do a good job. And there's quite a few people out there who are the same, who want to go in there and do as best they can. Now, here's one thing. You were talking about training and passing on that knowledge. It takes time. What I'm doing now, even with the podcasting, it took years to learn to do it well. And for anyone, if they're going to step into your company and do what you were doing, maybe quality control, sales, whatever it might be, they might not have the level of knowledge or maybe years of doing it. It's going to take them time and training.
Yeah, I think that really falls into this myth of I can do it faster myself. And that's true, that you can do it faster yourself in the beginning, but not over the long term.
Yeah.
I think another key thing there is you've got to allow people to fail as they're learning what you know so well, and then make sure they get the lesson from that failure.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about passion killer, and I'm guessing that when you're a small business owner and you're having to do all these little things that maybe you should be delegating, that kills the passion for your business. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So that right on the money there. So when you get so exhausted that you lose sight of your mission and vision and where you want to go, and then you're doing everything yourself, cash flow begins to be a struggle. It really can be, it just sort of sucks the life out of your business. And I personally believe that you can reconnect with that by having this, really going through this process that we outline in the book about defining your mission. Again, I'm talking not just about your corporate mission, but about your personal mission and vision as well.
And actually, that's the second passion killer, is not having a vision or thinking that vision's only for big companies, something that big companies do.
Yeah.
Because without the vision and that really determines your passion. I think the intensity of your vision.
Yeah. And what I'm getting, and tell me if you've had this experience, David and Susan, is that I found that sometimes your starting vision changes as you grow. And you have to be flexible to say, okay, that was my vision day one. What is it today?
Well, I think that is so true. And it also changes with your stage in life. It is okay. I think sometimes we tend to tell small business owners that they have to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But it's okay for a small business owner, and that's fine too. I'm not saying bad about that. But if you are at a stage in your life where you want to, let's say you want to be a solopreneur, and maybe you just want to have a couple people around you to help support that, there is nothing wrong with that. The one thing that I always want to leave people with is you get to decide. You get to decide, right? You get to choose who's going to come along with you on that journey. And it's okay. Whatever choice you make, whether it's to be what we would call a solopreneur or to build a Fortune 50 company, either choice is perfect. Just own it.
Yes. Go on, David.
I was going to say, once you build it into that Fortune 100 or 500 or 50 company, it's no longer a small business. You're really not an entrepreneur. It's a whole different skill set that you've got to learn when you get into that executive level for big corporations. So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had this one guy a number of years ago. He had built several serial entrepreneurs, several very successful companies that he was able to sell. But he had gotten to a point in his life, just like you mentioned, that now he was getting older and he wanted to not really retire, but really not have the overhead of dealing with 100 employees and everything that goes with that. So he scaled back, I think sold that business and opened up another business where he worked. He said, here's something that people or businesses don't think about. I hired vendors instead of employees to handle a lot of the day to day. So it wasn't that I had to hire and worry about these employees getting paid enough. Whatever was necessary for that particular business, I hired vendors to take care of it.
So true. And I think that's so in whatever kind of business you choose, the first step in beginning to figure out how I can take a day off is making that choice and building the structure that supports that choice.
Hmm.
Yeah. And we talk about that in the book, how important it is to figure out what that structure is and what you need and decide what you're going to outsource and what you might want to hire, as an employee.
I love that. One thing I got from a lot of business owners is they'll say, we got started, but they're not thinking about what is the processes needed. They'll just get started and be like, okay, I need a bunch of people to do X, Y, Z. And as they continue to grow and grow and grow, there needs to be some sort of structure in place to handle all the orders, the onboarding, the accounting, whatever it might be. But there needs to be processes set in place so the people they hire or vendors or employees know what to do from day to day and can move forward and expand.
I think that's absolutely key. And I would say, actually, Dave, that this is a great area for you to chime in on the processes and how to begin to start those with your company. I love your example in the book of the Post-it notes.
Well, part of it is figuring out what roles, in other words, what are the functions that you need in your company.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when you're first starting out as a solopreneur, you're doing it all. And I think you need to really get clarity on what roles you really need to take the business where you want to take it based on your vision and the kind of things we were talking about earlier. And then once you understand those functions and you know what those functions are, then each of those functions should have a process under it. So that anybody that you choose, whether it's an outsourced vendor, whether it's an employee, they know the process that you need to go through. Now, if you're like me as an entrepreneur, I'm pretty good at doing the processes, but woefully lacking often in following some of those processes. So for me, very often, to get rid of some of my traps that I had was to make sure I hired someone who was very good at maintaining processes and holding me accountable to the processes I needed to do.
That's great. Yeah. And what used to exist in businesses a long time ago, administrative assistants, that secretary who would be the kind of glue that would hold businesses and offices together, which people forget about. Sometimes you need those individual people who are like expert organizers.
Yeah. And I think today, when you're in this virtual world that we're all in, that's even more important to find somebody. They may not be able to sit right beside you anymore, but it's so important to find somebody to help you make sure that the processes are continuing to be followed that you've put in place. And I'm a little bit like Dave. I love process. I love to develop process. I also love to change them. So I just need somebody to make sure that that I find a good one and I stick with it.
Yeah, I love that you both mentioned that. One thing I've been hired to do for a lot of companies is they'll come in. They were a teeny weeny company, like we mentioned. They were a solopreneur doing it all. They started to grow, add one person, another person, and then before you know it, they have 50 people and they have pretty much no process. Everyone's flailing around. Sales is doing some spreadsheets here, and I'm like, what are you doing? And so I'll walk in and say, okay, what do you need from a financial perspective, because that's my expertise, to get things running, and then get all the departments kind of understanding what those processes are. But then, like you mentioned, it's sometimes hard, not even for just the entrepreneur, but for all the employees to realize this is a good thing. Because I think all of us included have trouble with change sometimes. It's kind of nice to do things the way we did them from day one. Sometimes change is a little uncomfortable.
Sure. And you as the leader, when you're going through that process, recognizing that your people are going to go through that process as well, right? We always say companies change, people transition.
Yeah.
So you want to think about, making sure that you continue to follow up. It's not a once and done. This is it really is a cyclical process that you want to always be looking at and reviewing. And if you, as the leader of the company, are spending so much time working in the day-to-day of your business, then you can't come up out of that and say, hey, what processes are working? How do I allow things to begin to run without me being there and providing, every bit of input into everything? And you end up with what becomes a decision bottleneck if you're not careful.
Yeah, and in fact, we talk about that in the book when it comes to some of the planning steps in terms of looking at the internal analysis. What's changed? What's the same? Same with the environment, the market, what's going on out there in the external environment that's changing. And sometimes those get missed and your company can get left behind very quickly if you're not paying attention to that.
Absolutely. Because the whole point, and that's why we're talking about it today and why you wrote your wonderful book, Yes, You Can Take a Day Off, is that you want to put these processes in place and have everyone on the same page with your vision moving forward so you can take that day off and not be micromanaging. Have good managers, supervisors that are doing it on a day-to-day so you don't need to be there in the nitty-gritty.
It's so true. And so that you're allowing yourself to have the time to recuperate and rest and really remember why you started your business and continue to enjoy it rather than feeling like sometimes I hear business owners say, I feel like my business is running me instead of me running my business.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing because many people start a business so they can be in control of their life. And then suddenly a couple of years go by and they realize they were never less in control because the business is controlling everything.
Absolutely. Well, there has been so many wonderful insights that you've both left us, David and Susan. I'm so grateful. But I don't want us to leave without everyone finding out how they can get their very own copy of Yes, You Can Take a Day Off and finding out how they can implement all of this into their business. How can they do that?
So their very own copy is available on Amazon.com. You can also get it at Sandler.com.
Well, Sandler.com/take a day off.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. So you can get and the book is really set up so that you can work through it. It has we encourage you to grab a notebook and kind of work through it yourself. But the other thing that's really important when you're going through these kinds of changes, because we're not talking about small changes in your business. We're talking about important strategic decisions. Mm-hmm. We really want to encourage the audience to find a coach that can help them work through it, a trusted advisor. Because while we all have those things that are our highest and best use, it might not be some of the strategy things that we talk about in this book. So we want to make sure we have somebody that can help us in those areas where we might need a little development.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because not everything outlined is perfect for your particular business or where you're at.
Right. And sometimes it really takes another set of eyes to kind of help us see things differently.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, both Susan and David, for coming. Everyone, please go to Sandler.com/take a day off, and I'll spell it SANDLER.com. Take a day off. Get your very own copy. Get your business rolling forward and expanding. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming to Savvy Broadcasting.
Thank you for having us.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.